بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. People ask often about the curriculum of Ulum al-Hadith, and they usually do not differentiate between Mustalah al-Hadith, Ilm al-Ilal, the branches of Mustalah al-Hadith like Ilm al-Ilal, or the branches of Ulum al-Hadith like Ilm al-Ilal wal-Jarh wal-Ta'dil, Ilm al-Rijal and other things. They do not usually differentiate between these things. Ulum al-Hadith are 8. They can be perceived as less than 8. They can be perceived as more than 8. But let's say that they are 8. And if we talk like what we did in al-Fiqh wal-Aqaid, we will just be talking about Mustalah al-Hadith itself, and I will take you to the last level of Mustalah al-Hadith, because Mustalah al-Hadith, Usul al-Hadith are like an introduction to the other ulum of al-Hadith. So when you study at-Tazkirah, or when you study even Kitab ibn Salah, you study things that are related to al-Ilal, related to al-Jarh wal-Ta'dil. It depends on the amount of the amount that you study in al-Ilal or al-Jarh wal-Ta'dil and other things and other branches. So let's talk about Mustalah al-Hadith in general, and I will not give one curriculum. As I said many times before, curriculums are not Quran, but as long as you justify your choices, I mean the Shaykh, as long as the Shaykh justifies his or her choices, then you take into consideration the reasons that made him choose these books instead of the other books. Let's start with the first curriculum, and this curriculum is focused on Ibn Salah. So our main concern is Ibn Salah. It's obvious that you will be studying Ibn Salah at some point, the book of Ibn Salah, and that you will be studying books that summarized Ibn Salah. In my opinion, and this is the best book to start with, whether you are concerned with the way of Ibn Salah or not, this is the best book for beginners in my opinion, and I have been teaching it for a while now, and I think I taught it 7 or 8 times. التذكرة للشيخ ابن الملقن رحمه الله تعالى. Ibn al-Mulaqin authored التذكرة, which summarizes his other book al-Muqna'. Al-Muqna' summarizes the book of Ibn Salah itself. This is one way. Tazkirah is like other books that did the same thing to summarize the book that summarized the book of Ibn Salah. In the next level, the second level, we can take his book Al-Muqna', but it's not the best book for the intermediate student. A better book would be المنهل الروي لشيخ الإسلام قاضي القضاء ابن جماعة رحمه الله تعالى. And the third book in that case would be the book of Ibn Salah. In order to go from one step to the other without needing anything in between, you have to study these books with mashayikh who teach them in the old-fashioned way that gives you the appropriate way, the appropriate details, and that is focused on the analysis of the text instead of focusing on summarizing the purpose of the text by reading and commenting. No, we need to analyze the text, the wording of the author, in order to have a good understanding of what he said. So 3 books only? Yes, 3 books only. 3 books only to finish Mustalah al-Hadith. You understand? 3 books only to finish Mustalah al-Hadith. Now you need to study Ilm al-Rijal, you need to study al-Jarh wal-Ta'dil, you need to study al-Ilal. Al-Ilal, this takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. Ulum al-Hadith haven't been finished yet. If you finish Ibn Salah, you haven't finished Ulum al-Hadith yet. I want to talk a little bit about Ibn Salah. Ibn Salah cannot be read as a matn. No, it needs everything that was authored to serve Ibn Salah in any way. Objections to Ibn Salah, responses to the objections, or like normal way of putting the hawashi or an-nikat on the book of Ibn Salah. That's why when I teach it, for instance, and this way is really difficult and the students do not really want to go through all this, I have to include and read most of the nukat of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and his Shaykh al-Hafiz Zainuddin al-Iraqi, and the nukat of Shaykh Badruddin al-Zarkashi. And usually this includes what Shaykh Alauddin Mughlatai said in his book Islah Kitab Ibn Salah, and I usually add other things from other books that might not be originally relevant to the book of Ibn Salah, like An-Nukat al-Wafiyya li Burhan ad-Din al-Biqai and other books that I haven't mentioned. This is the appropriate way of studying Ibn Salah. The appropriate way of studying in Manhal al-Rawi is, to be honest, what I do in Manhal al-Rawi is more difficult than what I do in Ibn Salah. Ibn Salah, I have a plate full of hawashi, full of nikat, full of accurate points in al-ilm that doesn't that do not make me need any additions. If I add something, it would be a discussion or a response or so, and my contribution, if compared to their contribution, it's not that big. However, in al-Manhal al-Rawi, I rely on myself heavily because I do not have any explanation or any hashiyah on al-Manhal al-Rawi except for the things that some contemporary mashayikh did, and I'm not really happy with them. I do not think that they are good. There is the way of, so this is one way, the way that is focused on Ibn Salah, but you can study in a different way, like for instance studying Taqrib al-Imam al-Nawawi in the first level. However, beginners who have never heard of the ilm before, they will find it difficult. Taqrib al-Imam al-Nawawi, Taqrib wa Taysir, the book that al-Imam al-Nawawi in which he summarized his other book, Al-Irshad. Al-Irshad is the summary of Ibn Salah. And I do not like the word summary. I do not like the other words, abridged or any other word. I do not like these. I would like to say mukhtasar. So if I say summary, I mean mukhtasar. So it's my own terminology. I mean mukhtasar kitab Ibn Salah. Al-Irshad lil-Imam al-Nawawi radiyallahu anhu Muhyiddin. So you start with the Taqrib. However, this has the disadvantage. The Taqrib doesn't suit beginners. It suits beginners. It's not the best option for the beginners of nowadays. It suits beginners, but it's not the best option for them. It needs a beginner who is dedicated, who is willing to learn and to face difficulties. Our beginners do not have this attitude. Like, this is focused on what? This way. It's focused on. It's not really focused on someone or something, but you are concerned with uniting the book that you study in all levels. So you read the Taqrib once for beginners, and you can read it another time while reading Tadrib al-Rawi. Tadrib al-Rawi Sharh Taqrib al-Nawawi, the Imam al-Suyuti. And you read Tadrib al-Rawi a third time. So now you have read Taqrib al-Nawawi 3 times. This was the Sunnah, or this is something that is done because it was the sunnah of some of the mashayikh. Some of the mashayikh, they preferred reading the same books more than one time. One for beginners, one for intermediate students, and one for advanced students. So it's a good way. I would be doing this one day. I would be doing it. But it's not the best curriculum for beginners who suffer and who are not used to the way of ulama, the old-fashioned way. This is very old-fashioned. So if you are a modern student of knowledge and you haven't gotten used to the old ways, this is not something that we advise or recommend for you. So you will be reading Taqrib al-Nawawi once, Tadrib al-Rawi, and this is, they call it al-Arda. Arda yani, this is the first time of reading the book, and al-Arda al-Thaniya, the second time of reading the book, would be Tadrib al-Rawi as well, and it would be more detailed, and you would be like putting hawashi on the comments of his Shaykh. Tadrib al-Rawi has some comments from some of the Shafi'i scholars, and they are really beneficial and everything, and the best copy is the copy of Shaykh Muhammad Awama, because of his comments as well. They are really good, and Shaykh Muhammad Awama is a great scholar of Hadith. Definitely, he's a great scholar of Hadith. Hafidhullah. Another curriculum, and this third curriculum is focused on the way of is focused on Alfiyat al-Iraqi. In the end, Alfiyat al-Iraqi is just the nazm. This poetry is just taken from the book of Ibn Salah, and some additions definitely, but it is focused on the book of Ibn Salah. There are different approaches when it comes to this. In my opinion, I prefer this one. When I say I prefer something, this means that it's either something that I did with students, so I tried this approach when it comes to Alfiyat al-Iraqi. When you are focused on Alfiyat al-Iraqi, I tried this approach with students, or I dedicated a month or so to read it that way. If I were reading it with students, طبعا I go really faster than when I explain in the dars, so that it doesn't take me anything but a month, maybe 30 days or more, like 40 days, to finish that curriculum, to read it as if I'm reading it to the student. Okay? So we have a lot of explanations on Alfiyat al-Iraqi, and our Salafi shuyukh, people with whom we read the Ulum al-Hadith, they never told us about the importance of Alfiyat al-Iraqi. They always told us about Alfiyat al-Suyuti, because Suyuti, and they made me memorize Alfiyat al-Suyuti, and I wish I memorized Alfiyat al-Iraqi, to the extent that nowadays I'm considering dedicating all my time, like in a month or so, to memorize Alfiyat al-Iraqi. Anyways, because the Salafi way of dealing with al-ilm is a very superficial way, it makes them consider something that the Suyuti said without taking into consideration any other factors that might be important in the dars, in the majlis of al-ilm, in the dars of al-ilm, where you interact with the students, with the book and the students. Suyuti said in his Alfiyah, فائقة ألفية العراقي في الجمع والإيجاز والاتساق. So it's better than the Alfiyah of Imam al-Iraqi, and he added to it خلاص في الجمع والإيجاز والاتساق, because he summarized the Alfiyah of al-Iraqi in maybe like 600 verses, and then the rest of the verses were things that he added to al-ilm or so. This is what they said to us. This is how they explained it to us. Regardless of discussing all that, he definitely said this verse, فَإِقَةً أَلْفِيَةَ الْعِرَاقِ فِي الْجَمْعِ وَالْإِجَازِ وَالتِّسَاقِ, so it's better and everything in the opinion of the Suyuti. But they never told us about the lack of shuruh, no explanations, no hawashi, except for something that is Shaykh al-Lughawi, the Shaykh of the Arabic language in the modern era, Shaykh Muhyiddin ibn Abd al-Hamid radiyallahu anhu, he authored the Sharh on Alfiyat al-Suyuti. Shaykh Ahmed Shakir, very short hashiyah. Shaykh al-Ethiopi in Makkah al-Mukarramah, okay, contemporary Sharh. What else? That's it. The explanation of Suyuti himself, incomplete. Some of the annotations of the Indian scholars, and that's it. Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi, no. They haven't finished printing and publishing the manuscripts. They haven't finished yet. So we have to focus on Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi in this study. Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi should be studied in this manner. If not Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi, the study of Ulum al-Hadith that is focused on Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi. So we need to reach Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi at some point. It should be studied in this manner. You start with a short explanation of Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi. So you will study Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi from the beginning, yes. And this might need something before it, like studying Al-Bayquniyya, for instance. I do not prefer Al-Bayquniyya in all the curriculums, but in that case I would say let's study Al-Bayquniyya بشرح الزرقاني وحاشية الأجهوري. The hashiyah is for the Shaykh, the شرح الزرقاني is for the students, and the poet or the nazm of Al-Bayquniyya is also for students. They need to memorize 34 verses or so, and the explanation is short explanation, Shaykh al-Zurqani. And the hashiyah of Al-Ujuri is for the Shaykh. He needs to he needs to study the hashiyah before teaching Sharh al-Zurqani. So let's start with this, and this respects Ibn Salah. Yani Al-Bayquniyya respects the madhab of Ibn Salah. It doesn't offer a new thing. Then let's read a short explanation, very short, like basic explanation. So we will go through all of the Alfiyah of Al-Iraqi. خلاص. Ibn Ammar al-Shahid, one explanation. Ibn Ammar al-Maliki. خلاص. Ibn Ammar al-Maliki, Miftah al-Sa'idiyya. خلاص. There is another explanation by Al-Aini, if I remember correctly, another short explanation. Ibn Ammar's one was, in my opinion, better, in my opinion, but if I teach, maybe I change my position. I do not like teaching the poetry itself without relying on some sort of explanation or hashiyah or something. I do not like this, teaching the poetry of Al-Fiqh al-Iraqi itself without referring to some short explanation. The next level should be the explanation of Al-Iraqi himself. And there are hawashi, some of them haven't been published yet, and this is really important. The explanation of Al-Iraqi himself. And it's titled Fath al-Mughis, يعني Fath al-Mughis للعراق, Fath al-Mughis للسخاوي. So same title apparently, and it has other names, but one of which is Fath al-Mughis. Third level, not Fath al-Mughis by As-Sakhawi. This is a reference, in my opinion. It's not a book that allows you as a Shaykh to respect the Azhari way of teaching, because it's full of details. It's like a hashiyah that doesn't need explanation. It might need some ta'liqat. So it's not the book of the dars. The book of the dars would be the explanation of Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari. The explanation of Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, and it has got very important hawashi that haven't been published yet. In the end, and actually we have other I can tell you about other curriculums, but these four are enough. This fourth one is the last one. when you are focused on Ibn Hajar's way. Remember, following one curriculum doesn't prevent you from reading the rest of the books. You need to read everything if you want to be a scholar. I said these are the books we study in a dars. This is how the Shaykh should teach. This is what I would be doing. Khalas. Mixing is fine, by the way, but this is the best you can do. And sometimes you are forced to mix curriculums, to start with a book from the first curriculum and another book from the third curriculum. This is okay. It's not Quran in the end, but you need to consider that this is the best, at least in my opinion, and it makes sense and it's justified in my opinion. If you are focused on Shaykh al-Islam ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, then you will have to study Nukhbat al-Fikr. I do not like this. I do not like teaching Nukhbat al-Fikr without teaching Nuzhat al-Nadhr. But we can do it if we know that we will continue anyways. We will definitely continue. We are sitting together 5-6 years. So we will continue and we will study the rest of the books, I mean Nuzhat al-Nadhr and the rest of the books related to Nukhbat al-Fikr. So you might start with the matn of Nukhbat al-Fikr itself. You might start with this. I do not like starting with any poetry related to Nukhbat al-Fikr. Then you study some explanation of Nukhbat al-Fikr or Hashiyah on Nukhbat al-Fikr. Hashiyat al-Attar is great, but this is advanced. I like it. I really like it. It is I find it tempting, but this is not something that you should teach in a dars. If you take students from the first level to the second level, you can read something like, and I really like this book, Natijatul Nadhr. The Sharih is the Shaykh of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Ash-Shumunni al-Qusantini. I really like it, and other explanations are also okay, but I find Natijatul Nadhr fi Nukhbat al-Fikr a very good explanation. This could be the book of the second level. Third level, let's study definitely Nuzhat al-Nadhr, and this is a very difficult book. You should spend years studying this book. The Shaykh should be aware of all the hawashi written on the book, and he needs all these hawashi in his dars, and he needs to choose and to filter these hawashi to have to suit the audience and to suit the level of the students. It depends on their intellectuality and other factors. Let's finish with what you should memorize. I think you should memorize 2 things, and that's it. Memorizing a lot of poetry is not useful. I'm saying memorizing poetry, what you should memorize, because most of people do not like memorizing prose or a book like Ibn Salah or Nuzhat al-Nadhr or so. So I will just say you memorize poetry because it's easier, and to be honest, in Ulum al-Hadith it's more beneficial, to be honest. Alfiyat al-Iraqi definitely is the first choice. This is not in the order of memorizing books. I said 2 books. Alfiyat al-Iraqi will be the advanced thing that you memorize. Before that, just memorize al-Bayquniyya. If you want to skip it, skip it and just memorize Alfiyat al-Iraqi. Before starting the study, sit, memorize it and do the job. I memorized Manzumat on Nukhbat al-Fikr. Not helpful. Qasab al-Sukkar, the other book by I do not remember the other author, I think Shumunni. I memorized these and I didn't really benefit. I do not even remember them, and they are not things that I consider. They are good and it's fine, but they are not things that I consider. I want to refer to the 5th curriculum, but without detailing it. It's focused on Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, and I do not think that we should do this because it deprives you of a lot of important books and a lot of important hawashi, and it will be focused on Imam al-Zahabi wa Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, and this is not something that I recommend. Also, I want to add a book that could be included in the curriculum that is focused on Alfiyat al-Iraqi, which is a great book and very important book, and I'm really happy that I taught it. The book of Al-Sha'rani, Muqaddimatu Ilm al-Hadith by Imam Al-Arif al-Rabbani, Shaykh Abdul Wahhab Al-Sha'rani radiyallahu anhu wa nafa'ana bih. It could be something that you study after the first level, which was Al-Bayquniya and Sharh Al-Surqani. So it can be something in between, but I chose to tell you the shortest curriculum that might be applied in the dars. Remember, in the end, that there is this desire of knowing curriculums. Please, this desire will never get you anywhere. You will leave al-ilm if you only focus on such desires. This should be something that guides you on the way. It shouldn't be all your ilm. It shouldn't be all your ilm that you know about what to study when, and you are a beginner or less than a beginner who haven't even started studying any of these books. Remember also to follow your Shaykh. Your Shaykh and his worst curriculums are better than my best curriculums if I'm not your Shaykh. As long as your Shaykh is someone else, because you're listening to me right now, if your Shaykh is someone else, his worst curriculums is better than my curriculum, as long as he is really a Shaykh, not half a Shaykh, not an advanced student of knowledge or a beginner who just decided to study al-ilm on his own and teach al-ilm on his own. I hope it was beneficial, and it had to be long. والله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.